I also recently read a report by Emma Dawn, who is a senior knowledge expert at McKinsey's, that yeah, it was right here. I want to be specific here. Yes, 80% of education transformations fail to meet their outlined goals. So that's a huge statistic. That's a huge number. So how do we ensure success, and what does success mean in a complex system? And I understand the feedback loops, but at one point, can we be like, okay, this reform, this worked, success?
If you take education is a good example as well, but you take the tax system, it's a much more tangible example of what I'm trying to explain. So the goal of the person who's setting the tax policy is to maximize or reach a certain revenue target, right? But what they fail to recognize sometimes is that when they set up a certain tax policy, the population who has to pay that tax, they adapt because the population has an interest in minimizing the tax they have to pay. So they adapt in certain ways. So one of the best examples I've heard of or read of is the window tax in the 17th century. We should tax every household based on the number of windows in the house. And they thought they could earn a steady revenue. But what did the people do? They took out the windows and put plastered walls in instead. So
This
that
is the
they
first
would
time I'm
have to pay
hearing
less tax.
this. Yeah.
You should look it up, right? So so they removed the windows so that they would have to pay less tax. But then they ended up getting sick because their houses were dark and damp and then not in livable condition. So it actually degraded the economic capacity of the country even further because people who could have otherwise gone and farmed the fields couldn't, and so they couldn't produce as much as that was expected of them. So that's a classic again. That's because it's a complex system. Because when you change one thing, the other side adapts to it, and those adaptations then feed back into the goals that were set in the first place, and you're forced to change those goals. The key is to understand there are some goals that you're better off not achieving. So, for example, if the goal is to achieve a certain GDP, and the predominant resource in a little island are trees. So to maximize GDP, you wanted to cut down trees and make stuff with it. That's precisely what happened to East Island. And then you maximize GDP by cutting down all the trees, but it's not habitable anymore. So that's a goal whose success is actually a disaster. So we have to be very careful about what we think success is and the means that we try to employ